Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. My name is Corey, and in today's episode, I am going through the best board games that I would recommend as next step board games. So if you already have a small collection of 5, 10, maybe 20 board games in your collection, and you are looking for a next step, kind of a level up in complexity of a game, then this list is for you. So let's get started. As always, if you enjoy the content you see here on the channel, consider subscribing. We really do appreciate it, and it helps out a lot. And check below in the description of this video for a link to the previous video where I recommended my 10 favorite board games to start your collection with. And like I said in the intro of this video, this list are the next step games that I would recommend if you're looking to step up the complexity for each of those game categories. So as I did in the other video, I will be starting with the deck building genre, and I'm not going to spoil the game that I would recommend to start your collection with in the deck building genre, but I have a few game recommendations here as next step games for you. There are actually 3 games in this category that I would recommend for this list, and the first one is Clank Catacombs, the next one is Lost Ruins of Arnak, and then Dune Imperium. All 3 games are different and provide different varying strategies, different ways to play the game, but I would recommend any of these 3 games as your next step up in complexity for the deck building genre. Starting with Clank Catacombs, it is a dungeon delving style game where you are trudging through the dungeon, flipping over tiles, trying to discover treasures and bring those treasures back with you to gain victory points. And how you're doing that, like I said, is with deck building. You are acquiring cards to your personal deck, trying to upgrade your deck to better move throughout the dungeon to collect those items, and you're trying to get out of there with the most points by the end of the game. This is very tried and true deck building, but it is with a board that you are navigating around, so it adds a little bit more complexity than my first recommendation in that last video. Like I said, you'll have to check that out, but I really like how it adds the spatial element and moving around a board and trying to do different things rather than just building a deck, building up a deck of cards that's unique from your opponents. You're also doing that in conjunction with moving around a map on the table, and that adds some really cool structure to the gameplay. The other game I recommend is the Lost Ruins of Arnak. This is a little bit different. It has deck building, but it mixes the deck building with worker placement. So the cards, like I said in Clank Catacombs, you are purchasing cards to your deck to make your deck better and unique from your opponents, but you're also navigating the cards you buy for your deck because on the card, it'll tell you specifically where you can send your workers to different areas on the board. So you can't just go ahead and send a worker to the board for an action unless you have the card associated with that location on the board. So I really like that mix with the deck building, and then the cards tell you where you can send your explorers to the board. Also, the Lost Ruins of Arnak is a really cool Indiana Jones style theme of a game where you are sending your, like I said, you're sending your explorer out to the board to try to do different actions and collect different resources with it. There's a really cool thematic tie in the game where you're actually writing in your journal as you explore and find new things on the map, and that is signified by a research track on the side of the board that you're going up for endgame scoring. And it's cool how that is associated with essentially moving your journal along the path as you are exploring more territories. And then also another cool thematic tie is some of the locations that you send your explorer to, there are guardians that are guarding like a cave or a different area of the map that you have to try to take down or defeat the guardian or defeat the monster to get benefits from that as well. And then there's also exploring different territories that will create unique worker placement locations as you discover them. So the map is variable. The exploration element to this all is incredible. And it feels like you're exploring a different area every time you play the game. And then the last entry on the spot to the list, like I said, is Dune Imperium, that has a lot of similarities with Lost Ruins of Arnak, where you're building a deck of cards. All the cards are unique, but those cards will tell you where you can send your agents onto the board in specific locations. If you don't have a card that allows you to play an agent to the spot, you cannot go there on the board. But this again does mix deck building with worker placement, but a very, very different style game, but still one that I would highly recommend if you like the Dune theme, or if you like the idea of where, this game is more more head-to-head or more combative. There's a little bit more confrontation going on with the other players compared to Lost Ruins of Arnak. So if you like more of that direct player interaction, then Dune Imperium might be more for you. So in Dune Imperium, like I said, you are sending agents out to different spots on the board. You're trying to gain alliances with the different factions to get points. Whoever gets to 10 victory points first wins the game. So it's a race to get those victory points. But how a lot of those points come is at the end of each round, there is a war that goes on, basically like an area control type battle. And if you can take first, second, or third place in that battle, you get a reward for that. And a lot of the time, the first place reward is getting a much needed victory point. Like I said, you only need 10 to win the game. So even one victory point feels like a huge accomplishment in this game. But a lot going on. The expansions to the base Dune Imperium are incredible. And then also Dune Imperium Uprising is a great way to start playing the base game of Dune Imperium if you don't plan on getting any other expansions. If you do plan on diving deeper into the Dune Imperium game, I do really recommend the base game of Dune Imperium and then that paired with the Rise of Ix expansion. But if you're not really too keen on buying other expansion content or spending more money on a game, then I would definitely just go for the Dune Imperium Uprising box and just stick with that. So those are my selections for the deck building genre. All right, and now getting into the genre of game that I call dice actions, where you're rolling out dice and using those dice to dictate what actions you can do. My recommendation for a next step style game with this mechanism would be Castles of Burgundy. So like I said, Castles of Burgundy, the main driving mechanism is you roll 2 dice at the start of your turn, and you can do actions with those dice. Depending on the numbers on the dice you roll, those will tell you different things you can do with those actions. But essentially in Castles of Burgundy, you have your own duchy board that's in front of you. You're using your dice to go and select different tiles to then place onto your board, and then also using future die rolls to place those tiles from your board into your duchy. You're trying to complete different zones for victory points. You're trying to not only complete those zones, but combo the tiles together for various actions, and to do cool, unique things with those as well. But the player who can best purchase specific tiles and build their duchy the best will essentially win the game. There's a lot more going on in Castles of Burgundy than just that, but I wanted to pick my dice action selections mechanism spot for this for Castles of Burgundy because I highly, highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I did not recommend it, like I said in the other video, because I don't know if it's quite the best game to start your collection with, but if you're looking for that next level and that next step up in complexity, and you love the idea of rolling dice and doing actions with the dice, I think Castles of Burgundy is a great game for that. All right, and the next mechanism here is the racing category. And if you're looking for a racing game that feels like you're racing, that's intense, it's fast playing, you are flying around the board and really trying to do the best you can with navigating the turns to essentially win the race. If you win the race, you win the game. And if you really like that style of game and you want a little bit more complexity pumped into it, I would say definitely pick up Heat Pedal to the Metal. Heat Pedal to the Metal is, like I said, an awesome racing game, but what makes Heat a unique game versus other racing games is that you have a deck of cards that will dictate how fast or slow your car can go, and you're trying to navigate that and play those cards at the right time to win the race. And it can be very difficult because the cornering around the turns on the track can be very tricky, and you have to have clever card play to get around them without spinning out, so you definitely have to slow down your car to take the turn more effectively, and then speed up at the right moment to get it in front of people and get ahead. And it's just a lot of fun what you can do with these cards, and you can burn additional heat to turbo boost, but if you overheat your engine, then that will hinder your car as well. So navigating when to heat up your engine, when not to, when to cool down your engine, all those mechanisms in this game are really cool, and all that with card play makes it a lot of fun and very fast playing. So that is Heat Pedal to the Metal. All right, the next genre of game here is just pure worker placement. If you like the idea of having a pool of workers that you can send one at a time to the board to do actions with, then this game here is definitely a great pick. One that you could technically probably start your collection with, but I like to introduce this to players after they've played maybe 1 or 2 other games in the worker placement genre first. But this one is definitely a little bit more step up in complexity, but not too bad. But I would definitely recommend Viticulture Essential Edition. In viticulture, you are running your own vineyard. You are bringing tourists to your vineyard to tour to gain money. You are planting vines out in the field. You are harvesting the grapes from the vines, sending them to the crush pads. You are crushing the grapes. You are bottling them, making them into various kinds of wine. You've got red wine, white wine, blush wine, and sparkling wine that you are trying to collect all the proper ingredients to make these various types of wine, put them in your cellar to age the wine, and then sell them at the right moment to make the most amount of money. Like I said, you can give people tours through your winery to gain money that way. A lot of this is done through contract cards that you pick up throughout the game that'll have a specific recipe or a specific type of wine that customer is looking for or that restaurant is looking for. And if you can fulfill that and sell it to them, you can gain residual income where they keep coming back for more and keep paying you from round to round. In addition to that, you get immediate income and immediate victory points. The first one to 20 or 25 victory points, I forget the exact amount, but the first one to that threshold of victory points will win the game, and you're doing that throughout the different seasons of the year as well. So during the summertime, you can do different things than you can do during the winter time. So it's really cool thematically how it all ties in together. It really feels like you are running your own vineyard, making your own wine, and doing this all with that worker placement mechanism. Simply send a worker to the board, do the action it says there, and then it's the next player's turn. But you have to be careful because if too many workers go to a location, that spot is blocked for the entire year, and nobody else can go there until a new year comes back around. So that is viticulture. All right, the next category genre here is route building. So the game I would recommend for this is probably the game that got a lot of you viewers into the hobby to begin with, but I think it takes a certain level of playing games for long enough to truly appreciate this game. And this game is Catan. For example, when I was early on in the hobby back many years ago, I played Catan as one of the very first games I had ever played, and I did not enjoy it at all. I did not appreciate what it was doing. I did not fully understand it. So that's why I think Catan is not truly a beginner game or one that you should start your collection with, but I think it's a great spot for the next step up of games in your collection where you already have a few games that have the route building and the different things going on, and understand and appreciate the fact that Catan is not simply just building out routes and trying to connect everything together, but there's also some other elements going on with negotiation and bluffing and gaining resources to build different things and how you're going to gain those resources in different ways. Yes, there's a lot of random luck going on with rolling the dice for the resource generation, but the game really sings well when you can negotiate with the other players on giving them a resource to get a different resource back and playing that correctly at the right time. So I know it's been said out there on the internet where Catan is a beginner game and one that you should start with in your collection, but I really think it deserves a spot in the next step up in complexity after you already got your feet wet in the hobby a little bit to truly appreciate what Catan is doing. So in Catan, you are building towns, you're building cities. Once you build a town or a city, you are building roads out from that town or city. You can only build new towns that are connected to your route of roads that are all interconnected, so you have to keep that in mind. You can block other players' routes by building out roads in front of them, blocking them from that. Like I said, you can upgrade towns into cities to get more victory points for that. And depending on which hex tile your town or city is resting on or that you built it on, that'll tell you which type of resource you get from the tile when that tile generates resources during the resource generation phase by rolling the die. So you definitely want to spread out and build your towns on different land types to have the best opportunity at generating those resources and bringing them back to you. Not only are the resources beneficial at building the structures, but it also gives you a hand of cards to have some trade capacity with the other players. If you have a lot of resources that you can trade to other players, that's very valuable. So it's not all about trying to get or generating the right resources for what you're trying to build at the opportune time, but it's also about generating resources that other players may need. So then you have those resources as leverage to be able to trade with other players for what you truly do need. And I'll just finish it off here real quickly with the best way I recommend at playing Catan. When you really get the hang of it, I recommend the Cities and Knights expansion with Catan. Seafarers is okay as well, but I truly believe the best way to play for the best experience, the most strategic, definitely a lot more complex, but the most strategic way to play Catan, in my opinion, is Catan base game with the Cities and Knights expansion. You'll have a lot of fun with it. So that does it for today's list. I hope you all enjoyed. In part 2 of this video, I will be going through 5 more genres, starting with tile placement, then 2-player only games, contract fulfillment genre, social deduction, and then my favorite way to play a solo game by yourself if you're looking for that next step up in complexity for solo games. So like I said, stay tuned for part 2 of this video series where I'll go through those 5 new genres of games on games I would recommend as a next step if you've already got a small collection of games built for more beginner games to get you into the hobby and you're looking for something a little bit more complex. So until next time, you all have a great day and have fun gaming.